Comparison price for Wednesday, July 30th, 2025, coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the historic Wall Center. In this show, a presentation of Bet365. Matt Sekeres alongside Blake Price, four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson, hitting switches and conducting things. We have a big program planned for you today.
How are you?
How are you?
I'm good.
Okay. I'm okay. I miss you when you're remote. Must be said, gets awful lonely in here.
Well, you know,
Mike doesn't say. Hey. Well, Mike doesn't say all that much.
Oh,
he says even less on the show.
Come on, man. Good company.
See, you're hurting.
No, he's great
feelings.
company,
You're
but he's a
feelings.
busy boy. He's got lots to do. Normally, I can count on you to bring like the amusing cat videos and all that to show prep.
Well, you've got 1 hour and a bit left before you head out on holidays, and then you'll really miss me. And then by the time you come back, my God, we'll get along famously.
Oh, absolutely. That's how it works here. Yeah. Incidentally, as a dog owner, you're going to have to edify me on this. You know the little green bags where you stoop and scoop and put the poop?
They're beyond just green, but yes, okay.
Okay. Are they biodegradable?
Yes.
Because I see one. I see one in a planter over here, and I'm like, oh, that's novel. The guy went through the trouble of stooping and scooping the poop, and then when he tied up the little green baggie, he just dropped it in the nearest planter.
Yeah, most people
outside planter. It must be.
Oh, I won't say most people. It is customary, whether you like it or not, that dog owners will scoop the poop, tie it up, put it in a discreet, what they think is a discreet spot, thinking, I'm going to get it on my way back. I don't want to hold on to it.
Hold it. Right. Okay.
But then, of course, 70% of the time, they don't go back.
No.
Yeah.
No. Okay. I noticed that today. I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
But also downtown, there's garbage cans everywhere. Like, you're going to walk 30
Well,
feet.
that's it. There's also poop everywhere.
Yeah.
The Whistler Golf Club poll question. I'm sure they'll enjoy that transition. Which trade do you think the Canucks will regret? Dakota Joshua, Artur Shilov's, neither or both? You can vote at the Sekeres Price X and YouTube channels. Dakota Joshua has spoken again in Toronto. And needless to say, he is quite excited about his new digs and his new lot in life. One of the things that he talked about was how much he was looking forward to playing for Craig Berube again as his head coach, because, of course, Craig was the head coach of the St. Louis Blues when Dakota Joshua made his NHL debut a number of seasons ago. Quote, he's a great guy and a great coach. Obviously, he was the one who gave me my first shot in the league, and I'll forever be thankful to him for that. And then he went on and said, I'd like to think I can do a little bit of everything. A big part of my game is getting in on the forecheck and being disruptive, but also providing a physical presence. And then, underrated. I believe in myself that I can score too. So I feel like I add a little bit of everything, somebody that can play up and down the lineup in all situations. So, whatever Leaf Nation needs, I feel I can provide. And we've talked about this a little bit since the deal, Blake. There are many Leaf fans who are excited about this. Now, they may have an outsized view of sort of his physical presence and toughness and all that, but I don't think anybody would dispute that Dakota Joshua is a pretty good fit for Berube's system, because he was a pretty good fit for Tocchet's system when he was healthy, and the systems are somewhat comparable.
Listen, I think you had to make this trade with the assumption that there will be a bounce from Dakota Joshua in terms of his performance from last season to this. And I think as Canucks management and as a Canuck fan, you can be okay with that, given the priorities of this team currently and the long-term priorities of this team in terms of cap space. He wasn't making scads of money, but I still think even for the player that he is, even the player that he could be this season, I wasn't totally comfortable with the cap hit or the term on Dakota Joshua's contract. I think I'm going to say neither on this poll question because I think the Shilovs trade was made out of necessity. We all know the waiver situation. We know the depth in goal with the two tried and proven NHL goaltenders above Artur Shilovs. And for Dakota Joshua, he could have 15 goals this season for the Toronto Maple Leafs, Matt, and I still think the freedom with the cap space that may or may not turn into something great. Hey, the Canucks may make the wrong choice with regards to the second line center that they choose for this season. They may make the wrong choice with how they spend this cap space. That doesn't mean the exercise of trading Joshua in and of itself.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that, of course, on if they choose a second line center, they may just roll with what they got and think that good enough, at least in the near term here. I voted Dakota Joshua. When the trade went down, I was clear. I didn't love this trade in the least. There were a lot of things that I disliked about it. I disliked the fact that they felt they needed to move him. I disliked the fact that they're moving him to take on Evander Kane full freight. I disliked the fact that they sold at low value, that they only got a fourth-round pick some 3 years down the road, because I am a believer in the Dakota Joshua bounce back. I think you can write off pretty much all of last season between the cancer diagnosis, surgery, and then another hip injury that cropped up. Now, if he is diminished physically, and I know there were reports that the Canucks were worried about the hip injury and how that would linger, then fair enough. But I did think that Dakota Joshua could bring something to this Canucks team this coming year. Of course, we've seen in the past he's got good chemistry with Teddy Bluger and Connor Garland. He was also one of their top penalty-killing forwards 2 seasons ago, and we know that is needed with the failure to bring back Pius Suter, who was their primary penalty-killing forward last year. So I voted Joshua. I would not be surprised in the least to see him have a good season for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think he would have had a contributing season here for the Vancouver Canucks. Look, will it be to the degree that it's worth $3.25 million for next year and for the next couple of years? That remains to be seen. I can understand that there was some value or at least some nervousness with how that contract would age. But Blake, I already see it in my head. There will be a headline on tsn.ca or sportsnet.ca next year about Dakota Joshua coming off a fantastic performance in a Leafs win.
Yeah, I think that's very possible as well. But again, it wasn't about we don't like this player, we don't want this player anymore. The picture was bigger in this transaction. Let me ask you this. If it was a trade of Nils Höglander to Toronto, are you voting Höglander in this poll? If it's Höglander, Suter, neither both? Or Höglander, Shilovs?
Sorry, if it's Höglander, if they had
instead
moved
of
Höglander.
Joshua, take this poll. Let's say it was Höglander traded to Toronto for the exact same trade. And we have this same poll question today, and it's Höglander's name instead of Joshua where you voted.
Probably voting Höglander, yeah.
Yeah, still. So
Yeah. And in fact, I think more of the market and the respondents would be voting Höglander if that was the case too.
Yeah. So in the did they make the right choice between Höglander and Joshua? Because they needed to create cap space somehow. So in that poll question, you're voting yes. Did they make the right choice? Is that correct?
Sorry, in that poll question,
Höglander or Joshua, did they make the right choice in trading Joshua?
Yes, because I believe Höglander has more upside.
Yeah. So I mean,
and he's younger.
So what I'm drilling down on is you're split in fine lines here. That you do think they could come to regret it, but they ultimately chose the right guy to create the space. Did they not?
Well, you see, in my world, you get the center done. You don't have to create the space to get the center. Like, we have put carts before horses here again. with Canucks management.
Okay.
But yes, in the
Yes.
narrow set of circumstances you gave me, yes.
You got dropped in as the GM on July 1st, and you have to make something of this, is my point.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
You got to clean up the mess that you had.
There was a plan. There was a plan. Then Evander Kane became available, and he's the owner's buddy, and all of a sudden the plan changed. The Daily Poll question brought to you by the Arnold Palmer-designed Whistler Golf Club, reminding you if you want to play the Whistler Golf Club this summer, you've got until August 31st. That's because their extensive golf course renovation begins in early September. We played the course last week. It is in fantastic shape, and it is a true treasure of British Columbia golf. I mentioned this last week. If you do find yourself out on the Whistler Golf Club course, take a moment from time to time when you're standing in a fairway or a green waiting for somebody to hit a shot and look skywards, because some of the views and some of the peaks that you see there and just the way they fit perfectly into, picture frames in your mind's eye, it's absolutely gorgeous. To book your round for what's left of July or August, visit whistlergolf.com. Let's get to our top story. It's brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery. I will be seeing at least the breweries, if not the winery as well, Blake, next week on our annual visit to Penticton. And matter of fact, we usually go play some golf in Oliver, and we stop at Foolish Winery on the way back, and then that night at Neighborhood or Yellow Dog. A Thomas Müller sign of life. The German superstar, get this, is still training at Bayern Munich's facility as of this morning so that he can stay fit for his new team, Vancouver Whitecaps FC. I absolutely love this, Blake. Here you've got a superstar player late in his career. We have seen this before with guys who take the quote-unquote retirement plan in MLS and their heart, mind, and body are not really in it. He's out there running, staying fit, so that he can contribute to the Caps here in a couple of weeks. And, I'm not sure we can understate just how big Thomas Müller was at Bayern Munich, which one of the biggest clubs in the world, right? So big that Bayern produced a 50-minute video, 50 documentary titled Thomas Müller, the Original. You can watch that on YouTube.
It's great. As you can see, and Dolan brought this up earlier in the week, he doesn't exactly look like he's out of shape to begin with.
No.
But the fact that he's committed to getting in shape, and you compare this to a year ago when the Whitecaps signed Stuart Armstrong out of the championship in the UK, and what happened? He had really enjoyed the offseason to that point. He arrived and needed certainly a month to get into shape. And even by the time the playoffs rolled around, they didn't really trust him. Vanni Sartini didn't trust him to really pull down a full 90-minute shift. That's how out of shape Stuart Armstrong was when he arrived as a Whitecap. So I don't suspect we're going to see that level of commitment from Thomas Müller. I think it's going to be well above that, and that's a good sign with this Whitecaps team full of expectation and full of hopes going into the playoffs.
Caps have not yet announced this signing, Blake, but all signs continue to point to a Friday signing. Now, one of the things I wanted to ask you, because I know you're in more contact with the Whitecaps and their PR department, as you know, there is a massive cultural difference between media relations here on this side of the Atlantic and what is done with a lot of the European football clubs. And the difference is that players, and this is particularly true in England, are almost never available to general media sessions. In fact, Jermaine Defoe recently did a podcast, Blake, where he was talking about his arrival at TFC, the flight to Seattle for a game, and then the game was over. The locker room door swung open, and all of a sudden, here were a bunch of reporters wanting to ask him questions about the game. And Defoe said that was culture shock to him, that he would never before experience a press gaggle in front of his locker as he was taking his boots off and taking the tape off. and having to explain what happened in the game. Look, I can't imagine that Thomas Müller is going to be available day after day after day, as you would find with, a typical athlete in North American sports, or at least that has been the case. Some clubs are moving away from this. Canucks, for example, used to be able to talk to just about any Canuck you wanted each and every day. That's no longer the case. They're getting more and more shielded. But are we anticipating a big press conference here from Müller upon his signing?
I think they'll do that, and they do that in Europe as well. A welcome press conference for a signing, sure. They will do that. The question would be, 3 weeks after he's arrived, after a 1-goal, 1-assist performance, is he doing another one? It'll be interesting. I mean, I've certainly reached out to the Whitecaps and said, hey, if you ever consider doing one-on-ones, I mean, again, when's the last time you saw them on podcasts, on radio shows? That's very few and far between for the global soccer star, but we'll have him on if they allow it, if he allows it. As you say, It's not exactly what the player will have been used to, but he'll also know that he's embarking on a new journey into a new market that does new things. And I think even Lionel Messi, while still relatively guarded by Miami, has still probably done way more media for Major League Soccer than he has in the last handful of years in his other leagues.
Yeah, and my sense is, like, from everything I've read about this Müller, he seems to have a pretty good head on his shoulders. Like, he seems to be a little bit more down to earth.
He's outgoing.
So I think he would also understand that, look, you're coming to soccer's last frontier, the last place where the sport still has a lot of runway to grow and build and be a bigger commercial entity. So I imagine that has been communicated to him, and my sense is he's going to want to play ball. Frankly, I would also make the argument it is good for not just this athlete, but any athlete to have to go through that. I feel like it keeps them in check a little bit. Like, for example, apparently Lionel Messi was aghast that he was suspended for skipping the Major League Soccer All-Star game. Like, Lionel, in what world? Mm-hmm. Like, you were required to do this contractually. You just blew it off. There are ramifications. Like, I understand that there's a whole lot of people out there who will accommodate you, compromise for you, cover for you, and all of that that comes with being a huge star in the world of sports. But there is a line of demarcation where there's accountability, and it's on you. So going to be interested to see how that is handled, how eager he is going to want to be to get out into the community and also to fly the flag for the Whitecaps and for MLS as he goes around the league. Because let's face it, Blake, like, this will be a player that, you go to Chicago, there's a huge German community there. There's going to be a lot of people there who want to see him play and hear from him and so as he makes his stops around MLS. According to SI Germany, Müller will earn $687,000 US this year as a TAM player. We have discussed this. There is levels of compensation in Major League Soccer. If you're a designated player or if you're U22 initiative player, then you get into the guys who are TAM and GAM, targeted allocation money, general allocation money, and he is playing at that level for the remainder of this year. The report also says he will be a $7.5 million player next year as a designated player.
And so you put it all together, Matt, and the transfer of Vitae almost pays for all of Schuster. Right. Or all of Müller. Schuster pulling the strings. I mean, so it's really a Vitae.
They did spend some of that money on Cabrera as well, the Peruvian. But yes,
but that would be the extra then. He's a U20. That would be the surplus. Really, Vitae for Müller is the trade, if you will. So that's pretty good.
And I honestly hope it works out for both club and player, that both are happy, because $7.5 million next year, if Kerfoot and Mallet are still trying to sell the team, that gives me a little bit of pause. There's a little bit of me that goes, oh, God, I hope they're willing to pay that next year if the team has not yet sold, because you do tend to see owners sort of strip down teams to make the cost side a little more appealing to would-be buyers. So that's a concern for another day. Our friend Manuel Veth of Transfer Market, based on the island, says circle Sunday, August 17th at BC Place for Muller's potential Caps debut against the Houston Dynamo.
Seems very reasonable.
He last played July. Well, he's training.
Yep.
He's training as of this morning. He last played July 5th in the Club World Cup. So that's the other amazing thing about this signing. It's not like he's in complete off-season form and needs that long runway to fitness, as Blake referenced with Stuart Armstrong last year. When he does debut, Blake, he will be one of 5 World Cup winners playing in Major League Soccer. And the other guys play for Miami and LAFC. Like, just think of how crazy that is, right? Yeah, Messi, Busquets, huge names in the world of global soccer.
And DePaul. Yes.
Yeah. Like a who's who of soccer. And this guy stands there with them and will be playing in our town. It's just amazing because notice the jealousy in Toronto is continuing, Blake. This is from Toronto Sports Network, which is a parody account, but nevertheless makes a good point here. If Thomas Müller was signing with Toronto FC, it would be TSN's top web story and have an entire section with 10-plus stories dedicated to it. But when it's Vancouver, nah, we can't give that precedence over the classic. Toronto team may or may not make trades. And in fairness, the Jays are white hot right now in terms of fan interest. The Major League Baseball deadline is tomorrow, and they're not even a TSN property, so good on them for recognizing that. But the point stands that when TFC signs a Eurostar, it's stop the press's war font. They can't bring themselves to giving it the same treatment that
I'm almost mildly surprised, Matt, there isn't a bigger where's the TFC Müller story?
Yeah, like exactly. TFC tried on Müller. Now that Vancouver has signed Müller, looking at TFC's top Euro targets for this transfer window, I'm sure.
Does Austin Matthews become
a
Whitecaps fan now that Müller is in Vancouver?
And then lastly, this, and we missed this. I had seen the name, but I didn't delve into it. I should have. From our friend Jason Beck, the curator of the BC Sports Hall of Fame. He says, throwing this out for debate for those trying to place the significance of the Thomas Müller signing with Whitecaps FC. Biggest Whitecaps signing ever or biggest since Rudy Kroll in 1980. People forget the Caps signed some very high-profile players in their latter NASL years. Yeah, we mentioned a couple of them yesterday, Beardsley and Ball, but Ruud Kroll joined the Caps in 1980 after a sterling career with Ajax in his native Netherlands. He captained the Dutch. He was a 2-time World Cup runner-up. He finished third one year for the Ballon d'Or, given to the best player in global soccer. But the other distinction, and we talked a little bit about this yesterday, Ruud was typically a left back. He played some defensive midfielder, but he was not overwhelmingly involved in the scoring for Ajax or for the Dutch at the top of it. 4 international goals over his career and 23 and 3.
Not a headline maker in and of himself.
Well, he was a headline maker in teams of everybody knew him. Everybody understood he was one of the best defenders in the world and a key piece of the Dutch team and the Ajax team, which needless to say had its share of club and European success. But yeah, Müller plays more forward in the pitch. I think you're going to see more Müller highlights than you would have with Rudy Kroll and the Whitecaps in 1980. And, as we also mentioned yesterday, it's just a much different world in terms of information where you can follow European soccer here from Vancouver easily these days, where that was not the case 45 years ago when Kroll joined the Whitecaps.
Going to be very interesting, and we've anecdotally, at the very least, heard from a lot of our listeners and viewers saying, yeah, they are going to be buying tickets already, and that could be exciting to see what those numbers look like when he eventually makes his debut. Selfishly, again, I'm doing that 23rd game, so I hope it's that one, but the 17th would be just fine.
Here's what I will say, and I understand that Müller and Jesper Sorensen will both have a say in this, and it is a competitive situation. We've talked about this, Blake. They were in quite a derby at the top of the West with Minnesota and San Diego. Those teams have sort of separated themselves from the pack, and of course, you want to be first place. And have home pitch advantage throughout the MLS playoffs. I get all of that, but I would hope that everybody at the club, and I think they will, sees fit to understand you're going to need somewhat of a runway here of several days to be able to promote and communicate the fact that Müller will be making his debut, to give people enough time to plan and buy tickets and make their arrangements to get to BC Place for when he does step on the pitch.
And I hope clarity too of he's available for selection, not expected to start for next game. He's full health now. He's available for selection for the starting 11 for this game. Right. Just be really clear so people don't get upset when they realize the game has started and he's not on the pitch.
Right, because everybody wants to be there for his debut. And yes, if it is in a non-starting role, you want to message that clearly as well for when people enter the building. As we talked about yesterday, the Caps are in San Jose when they come back off the League's Cup break. They are not participating this year, so that's August 9th in San Jose. Then they're in Hamilton for the first leg of this Canadian Championship semifinal tie against Forge FC on August 13th. It is the Houston game on Sunday, August 17th. That is their next home match. And then 6 days later, St. Louis at BC Place. Blake and Paul will be calling that game for MLS Season Pass on Apple TV. So
there is an alternative timeline here, Matt, where they give him 10 minutes versus San Jose. They give him 20 minutes in the CanChamp game. And they start him
to touch the field at Hamilton Stadium.
I mean, just for the minute.
I don't think you fly him. I don't know.
Yeah,
because here's the other thing. And actually, Defoe mentioned this in that podcast that I previously referenced. That he gets to TFC. Okay, where's the next match? Seattle. Gets on a plane. Oh, how long's the flight? Well, 4 or 5 hours. He's like, what? The European mind doesn't understand the length of flights we go through for one single match on this continent when you're traveling 3 time zones, east to west or west to east.
I was just trying to find a way in which he could actually start. And now he could start and play 45 and come out at half, I guess, versus in that 17th game.
Yeah.
So
I think Veth has it right. And if he is training, 2.5 weeks here, get yourself settled, get yourself sorted, go through the media stuff.
You can play 45.
Go through everything else that you're going to need to go through in setting up a home or a residency here in Canada, and then have at her against the Dynamo at home. And, hopefully twice that week, right? They play Sunday, Saturday that week against Houston and St. Louis. So
one thing we know he won't be a problem child, but Neighborhood Brewing's got one. The problem child Kolsch. This is a beautiful beer, light-bodied with a crisp, clean finish, keeps things light and easy, perfect for summertime, perfectly sessionable, just enough bite to keep things interested as well. Go check it out. Neighborhood Brewing's Problem Child Kolsch.
Staying with soccer, the 2026 FIFA World Cup draw will go down December 5th in Las Vegas, Nevada, likely at the Sphere, according to ESPN. We'll find out who's in Canada's group, when and where they'll play. Canada is projected to be in pot 1 with the USA, Mexico, the defending champions from Argentina, and take a look at the rest of those global soccer powers that Canada's flag is not often with. But,
and for the
hosting
layman,
has its privileges.
For the layperson, that means that they won't have to play any of those
teams. Now, that's not official. That's just projected. You want to make that clear. But, yes, that would mean that they would be able to avoid these clubs in what is the biggest ever FIFA World Cup, right? Yeah. We have invited more countries and changed the format for 2026 from what we saw in Qatar. Canadian international Tejan Buchanan has re-signed with Spain's Villarreal for 5 more years, so he'll continue to play in a top flight league for a top club. And then there's this, Blake, and I was absolutely seething when I saw this. First out, shout out to Ambassador Paul down in New Zealand, a regular audience member who DM'd me and said, hey, look at this. Bev Priestman is coaching in my country now. Former Canadian women's national team head coach Beth Priestman met folks, the media down in New Zealand with her new club job and made some, in my view, what are outlandish comments and claims about the aftermath of last year's drone gate at the Paris Olympics. If you don't remember, the Canadian national team was caught flying a drone over an opposition practice. This drone program had apparently been going on for several years as a way of gathering intelligence on opponents. Most soccer coaches will tell you it wasn't bloody necessary to begin with because there is film of these teams playing games that do just fine, thank you, in terms of getting your scouting report and your game plan together. Nevertheless, this program with John Herdman and Bev Priestman goes back some ways. It was documented. There were investigations. The parties got off relatively scot-free given the degree of the crime here, or the
infraction.
Infraction, right. And I say that because the Olympic airspace over Paris was protected. You weren't supposed to be flying anything. It was a national security matter for the French. So, that's how big a deal it was in the eyes of the Paris organizers. So it was spectacularly stupid. You were going to get caught on top of it being an international incident, which embarrassed Canada and Priestman. And, of course, it hurt the team because they were deducted points and they weren't able to advance as far as some would have liked because they did a hell of a job trying to get back and dig out of that hole. So she meets the media down there, and this from our buddy Ben Steiner of Northern Football. Bev Priestman says she didn't leave her house for a month after Dronegate and returning to Canada from the Paris Olympics. Quote, I didn't feel safe. It was very difficult for my family. She continues, it was an absolute media frenzy. We knew we had to get out of the country.
Out of that country. A team like that was the tone in her quote. And media frenzy, I mean, on the scale of
it may have been a media frenzy in Paris. It may have been a media frenzy in Paris. It certainly was not a media frenzy at your suburban Vancouver home. It's not like there were TV satellite trucks parked outside there following your every move. Unsafe? Come on.
We already know there's not a lot of media that covers soccer in this country to begin with. Pair that down to covering women's sports in this country, even fewer. And I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm just saying that's just the state of
the reality.
That's just the reality of what it is right now. And did news get involved in this? Yeah, probably.
Sure, of course.
But my goodness, come on.
But Blake, we don't have this hooligan culture where soccer is life and death, and we go to extreme lengths when our team loses or does something untowards in a sporting way.
Also, media, I would say, Ben Johnson had it.
That was a media circus.
That was a media circus, and that was in a media world.
Well, but that's even
differently now. Media doesn't even exist.
And
the
that's
vast
even
majority of soccer media now are blogs. Mainstream media barely exists.
And that's even to the degree, Blake, that a media circus makes one feel unsafe. Look, if there was some sort of threat or something reported to Bev via the authorities, then that's as and that should never happen.
It takes one idiot to make you feel unsafe.
And
but
my
she didn't
sympathy
cite that.
on
she
that.
Didn't cite
but
that. She said
no,
the
exactly.
Frenzy as being what made her feel unsafe.
Maybe you didn't want to leave your house because of the shame and regret, Beth. Maybe that was it instead. But this whole playing the victim card on the other side of the world when you take your next job and bad-mouthing our please.
Coming off a suspension and an investigation by all
Yeah.
of the authorities in France, it was you that is the victim. Okay.
No, exactly. Well, and you're lucky you got away with just that.
Yeah.
Again, this just wasn't a sporting infraction. This was taken really seriously by the French authorities.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you had people in very high positions on the security side of things. And of course, we know how big and expensive security is for an Olympic Games. We know what that cost Vancouver and BC and Canada to run the 2010 Vancouver Whistler Games. And of course, we've known this for the better part of 50 years since the Munich massacre. So there are some people in extraordinarily high positions in France who had the responsibility of making sure that that airspace was totally void of anything that could be perceived as a threat. And here comes a Canada soccer drone looking for intel from a team's training session.
And if you're wondering at home, okay, well, what should she have said? She should have said, "I'm really sorry that I made a mistake that put undue stress on my family." And end of story. Done.
Right.
Because she probably didn't like the media, quote unquote, frenzy, but let's not make it into something that it wasn't.
Well,
And
and
it
let's
was all
understand
because of
who
the
is
actions.
responsible for
Yes.
it.
Yeah. Wasn't
No drones, no media frenzy.
right.
You could have gone to the tournament, finished a disappointing 8th. I promise you, Bev, you would have been safe in this country. You could have left your home.
Yeah.
And we had her here in studio once. I quite liked her. Thought she was fun, smart, sharp, great sense of humor, good personality. I was rooting for her, as we all were. Let's face it, this is one of our best teams, period, across Canada, right? One of our most successful. 3 consecutive Olympic medals for the women's soccer team, including the gold medal, Olympic champions at the Tokyo Games. Like, this is one of our on a pedestal, proud, brings us all pride programs, the Canadian Women's National Senior Team. And to see what it was reduced to after the drone scandal and the leadership of it, and no fault of the athletes on that team who competed their tails off last year. I mean, that was heartwarming, brought tear to your eye the way they competed after being given that point penalty, again, through no fault of their own.
Well, Matt,
I was furious when I read that earlier today, Blake.
in terms of this program too, and what has been sullied is this is maybe the one team sport in Olympic participation outside of the sport of hockey, team sport, that has been a built from the ground up success.
Yep.
And despite promise from the other programs, there's been really nothing at the U23 level for men's soccer at the Olympics. But, basketball for both genders has shown promise, but really hasn't translated into anything.
Yep.
No podiums there. And then all the other, the volleyballs and netballs and field hockey.
No,
this is the only team sport success that we have had outside of ice hockey.
And a lot of credit goes to John Herdman. He did a magnificent job in the early days with the Canadian women's national team. Of course, you had a generational player there in Christine Sinclair, but that in and of itself, in a game where you got 11 players on the pitch at all time, doesn't guarantee success. No, there was a very good job done by Canada Soccer and the coaches of the women's national team and Bev as well in taking over from Herdman. But it all came down last year with DroneGate. And put it this way, that program is better off now without Bev and without the leadership that they did have, because we realized their warts much, much later in life.
There's a lot of coaches.
Braden,
a lot of coaches.
Yeah, there's a lot of coaches that can take talent. And Braden Coots, Canucks first-round draft pick. And we wondered about this earlier in the week. He skated as the extra forward in Canada's intra-squad scrimmage, red team versus white team, at the World Junior summer showcase. And as we surmised earlier in the week, Blake, Coots is going to be in tough to make this team with 5 returning forwards and many older centermen invited to the camp. As you can see there on the graphic, he's on the right-hand side there. He's the 4th center down. He played behind Berkeley Catton, first-round pick of the Seattle Kraken, Michael Hage, first-round pick of the Montreal Canadiens, Cole Baudouin, first-round pick of the Utah Mammoth, and all 3 of those guys first-round picks in 2024, not 2025, so they're older than him, and they were playing ahead of him. Then there's the other team where Michael Misa, the 2nd overall pick in this past draft to the San Jose Sharks, Caden Lindstrom, who's the top 5 pick last year's draft to Columbus, and Jake O'Brien, a top 10 pick in this year's draft, centered. So you look at that, it is awfully tough sledding at the center ice position to make this Canadian World Junior team, so much so that Sasha Boisvert, Cole Reshny of the Victoria Royals, or ex of the Victoria Royals, and Benjamin Kindle, who's a Lower Mainlander, who have all played center in their junior career, were playing on the wings.
The good news is the other prospect, Wilson Bjork, has been playing with his brother for the most part for the Swedish team in their showcase, and he picked up another assist today. He's got 4 assists in 3 games so far, so he continues to do everything that he needs to do to make his team and to make his development complete here this summer. So that's a good sign for Wilson Bjork at the very least.
Yeah, and while Bjork was drafted this year by the Canucks in the 5th round, he had already gone through a draft. So he was a returnee re-entry, if you will. He is 19. In fact, he turns 20 just a few days after the tournament ends in January. So he's got the age going for him. At the Swedish camp. He's also got his brother going for him, a projected top 5.
They probably
top
like that
pick.
chemistry. It's
I would think, it's a short window and runway. You're looking for guys who have chemistry with each other. I would think the Bjork brothers have played some hockey together and would have that in greater measure than a lot of the guys who would be learning their teammates. And then this is now official. The Dallas Mavericks are coming to Simon Fraser University in Burnaby for their training camp this fall. It's going to be a busy few weeks in basketball, as our buddy Rob Williams notes. So the Mavs are here from September 30th to October 4th. All practices are closed to the public. That is not unusual for NBA teams. In fact, when I was covering the NBA, every practice was closed of every team around the league.
Usually the final 10 minutes would open up.
Usually the final 10 minutes when guys are practicing free throws or working on specific things, you could walk into the gym and interviews would go down there. But that's just media, Blake. Like, public never were in an NBA practice gym. So you're not going to be able to lay eyes on first overall pick Cooper Flagg as he goes through his first NBA training camp, nor NBA champions and Olympic gold medalists Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving. I would sure hope our old friend Jay Triano, who's now a Mavericks assistant coach, of course, former Canadian Raptors head coach and SFU alum, I would imagine that Jay is out and about and flying the flag for his new team there in his hometown. And we should also mention Dallas is going to bring a couple of Canadians to this camp. Dwight Powell, who is an absolute unicorn in the NBA.
Dwight Powell is still playing. You're crazy.
He's a role player. He has been nothing but a role player. He made an early move in his career from the Celtics to the Mavericks and somehow has avoided being one of the throw-in guys to balance the salaries and all
Kelly
the
Olynyk. A poor Kelly
Exactly.
Olynyk. Yeah.
I mean, if you're an NBA role player, pretty much year to year, new teams every year, every couple of years, you're thrown into trades for bigger names just to make the salary cap work. Dwight Powell is entering his 12th year with the Dallas Mavericks as a bench guy. They got another Canadian there, Olivier Maxence Prosper, second-year guy who had a very good college career. And then just as the Mavs are picking up and moving on October 4th, here comes the NBA preseason game on October 6th at Rogers Arena between the Toronto Raptors and the Denver Nuggets. And as we talked about, if Nikola Jokic comes and plays that game,
pretty big. Yeah.
Quite a lot of star power is going to be running through Vancouver that week when it comes to basketball. A 3-time MVP, a first overall. I don't want to call Flagg a generational prospect because, Wembanyama a couple of years ago, I think probably most would say he has the higher upside. But Cooper Flagg is one of the better first overall picks as prospect status goes this century in the NBA. So, all sorts of huge stars going to be here from the basketball world end of September, early August.
It's still a bit of a black hole for the sports calendar. So, welcome addition,
Yeah.
Before the NHL season begins.
Right. It's just before the NHL season gets going. I sometimes felt like Raptors camp here was lost locally because it was taking place right around the time where we were,
ramping up,
gripping for that first, that first game, and looking at rosters and trades and things like that in the NHL. Anyways, let's get to our menu. It is brought to you by Greta. Fantastic spot to catch all the games, home and away. If you're going to a game, pregame or postgame, there are your steps from the arena or stadium. Country Week at Greta, August 5th to 10th, and the Country Club official after party on August 9th. Going to be a fantastic week. All sorts of contests, events, of course, country music. And if you are planning a summer event, maybe it's team building at the workplace, maybe it's a family reunion, something like that, check out Greta for your social event. Great street food, the arcade with a game for everyone. To book your event, get more info, gretabar.com, Greta 50 West Cordova. Let the games begin. We will talk to our friend Frank Curado, TSN hockey analyst and former Vancouver Canuck, on Dakota Joshua, on the Canucks search for a center. DP or Wielander, who's more valuable as a trade chip? We asked that to Frank. And then our dear friend, Captain Gregg Bell of the Tacoma News-Tribune will stop by. Some news happenings with the Seahawks down the I-5 where John Schneider, their general manager, has received a second big vote of confidence from Jody Allen and the team's ownership. He signed a contract extension today. He, of course, was selected to lead the team over Pete Carroll a couple of years ago. And all sorts of changes with the Seahawks. A new quarterback, a new number one receiver, whomever that may be. They may a change at tight end. They're trying to rebuild their offensive line, which has been a sore spot. A couple of interesting-looking rookies on this team, including one in the defensive secondary. So great catching up with Gregg Bell and talking a little Seahawks here as we are on the eve of the NFL preseason, starting with the Hall of Fame game. I can't believe that's here already. Later in the program, the golf report, taking a look at the Canadians and what some of them have to do to get into the PGA Tour playoffs, as well as the baseball. The Blue Jays made a trade. The Mariners are making moves as well. And some of the tennis at the National Bank Open in both Toronto and in Montreal. That's all coming up on today's program. Time now for our Bet365 bets of the day. And Blake, the streak is over. We got 5 in a row betting baseball, but we lost it last night where the Rays weren't quite good enough to beat the Yankees. So you take over, my dude. What you looking at today?
Well, a little preview of the golf report. Adam Hadwin needs something good to happen this weekend at the Wyndham Championship. I'm not going to be so bold as to say that he can win this thing, but if he can get into the top 5, as much as that still might not be enough to actually get him into the PGA playoffs, just to give him a vote of confidence, slingshot him into next season at the very least, plus 5,000 for Adam Hadwin to somehow find himself on the front page of the leaderboard on Sunday.
Look, I'm going with a fun one tonight. I am going with one that I will wholeheartedly admit is a hope bet. And that is Jeannie Bouchard, who plays in the second round of the NBO of the National Bank Open in Montreal, her hometown. As we know, she is retiring after this tournament. As we also know, she won her first match of the season. In fact, her first match at this level in 2 years, her first match at this tournament in 6 years. In the opener, she had the crowd behind her. I think that'll be the case tonight in Montreal. She's playing a good player, a ranked player, a seeded player. She's plus 800, but probably going to have it on anyways for Jeannie's farewell. Might as well put a few.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, at plus 800, right? It's huge odds, right? So little bit could go a long way if she can pull it.
No Cinderella run yet, but if she wins this one, I think that starts to get ramped up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, look, she's not going to win the tournament.
No.
And I'd be stunned if she even made the semifinals. But it would be a hell of a ride if she can win one more there. This segment of presentation of Bet365, whatever your bet, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Download the app, get in on the game, use code NATION when doing so. Must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. Frank Curado coming up next. Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center, and time to welcome in a new partner. The Redwoods Golf Course in Langley Township, and Blake and I were out there last week getting some tips and some help from their pro, Craig, and God knows we need it. And partner was amazing because, like, within about an hour or so we spent with Craig, we both got some helpful tips.
Some breakthroughs, yeah,
really breakthrough. Yeah. Like, I found out I was chipping with the wrong club from in and around the fringe area, and I got a much better technique down for those sorts of shots. We spent some time on the range. Craig gave us a terrific putting drill to use before your round kicks off. You know, you put your putter down, you put a tee just outside of the width on both sides, and then you hit some of those 3 to 5 foot putts that can really destroy your score if you miss them.
I saw the pros prepping this week. They were doing that drill.
That is a pro drill. Yeah, that is absolutely a pro drill. If you watch Golf Channel and the camera's on the practice screen, you will see pro after pro doing that drill. So whether you are a golfer or learning to play golf, we highly suggest spending some time at the Redwoods Golf Course with their pro Craig right now. 4 1-hour lessons over 4 weeks for $160. This is all relaxed, no pressure. It is a fantastic way to learn the game of golf. The next class starts on August 14th. There are private and semi-private adult lessons also available. Those are flexible to your schedule. Group lesson info, go to redwoods-golf.com/instruction. Thank you to Craig and Jeff and Jenna and everybody out at the Redwoods Golf Course. Looking forward to spending some time out there playing some golf and improving our games.
Never too good to need golf lessons, as our next guest can probably concur.
Well, pros have coaches. They take lessons, so to speak. Here's Frank Curado, former Vancouver Canuck and TSN hockey analyst. How you doing, fella?
And former avid golfer before Twins.
Yeah,
exactly. He used to golf.
Yeah, used to golf, former golfer, future golfer at some point again. Caught somewhere in the middle. Actually played 18 yesterday. First time playing 18 since Rimouski at the Memorial Cup. My play has been, I've played 9 holes 5 times. And those 5 times have occurred either during nap time, so get them down for the nap race to the course, or like in June after bedtime, get them down like 7:15, race to the course, play 9 by myself, race through it.
Yeah.
Anyways, had it on the books, played 18, not bad, shot 79, and drove the ball kind of crappy, but irons and short game were good, so it kind of made up for it. Weird, that's not usually the way my game is. It was a bizarro round. Yeah.
We want to talk some Vancouver Canucks with you, and we want to talk about a guy who is heading your way, Frank, to the city of Toronto and the Maple Leafs. Dakota Joshua talked this week, and he talked about how he is excited to get back playing for head coach Craig Berube. And, of course, Craig was the head coach of the St. Louis Blues in 2020. and 2021-22 when Dakota Joshua first started dipping toe in the National Hockey League. What do you think? Does Joshua fit the Berube system? Does the Berube system fit Dakota Joshua?
It very much does. And I think Toronto very much needs a player like Dakota Joshua. And not just one player, because Toronto in the past has kind of been guilty of saying, like, we have a guy who plays physical and with an edge, and they need more of that. But where Dakota Joshua comes in is, like, he's a bit of a temperature changer in a game, as you guys know, right? Like, willing to be confrontational, willing to agitate, and not the second one to arrive to the party to do it. Like, can be the first guy on the scene to do it, which is not something that typically happens for the Maple Leafs. And as far as how they, Toronto's tried to play different with Craig Berube, with Sheldon Keefe, there was a little more, like, puck possession is just a bland term now, but there was a little more, let's bring it back, let's go side to side, let's not let's get it off the wall as quick as possible, and sometimes that would lead to some, like, higher risk plays that would get turned over. With Berube, it is a little more just like straight up, chip it, go get it, and let's not force it off the yellow dasher if we don't have to. Let's be more comfortable playing on the outside of the ice, and when we have the opportunity, we'll bring it in. So, like, Dakota Joshua is going to fit what they're trying to do, and gives them a little more meat that they would definitely covet and need.
Everything you said is true. Everything you said is true and is possible. But I would say the biggest issue is going to be getting that consistency. He's not as good as Alex Edler was, but Alex Edler could play with the elite players in the NHL on defense when he was on, when he had it all going. But Canuck fans were forever imploring him to bring that physicality, that edge all the time, and it wasn't necessarily always there. Dakota Joshua's got to find a way to find his A game just a little bit more frequently, I think. And playing for Berube, that's the kind of coach that might be able to bring it out. But I would have thought that of Rick Tocchet as well, and it didn't happen last year.
Last year, I would almost say that last year, I'm not going to say it's a write-off. You can't just discard a whole year, but it did have... Yeah. It's like an asterisk year, right? With what he was going through personally and what the team was going through. But if they get the Dakota Joshua from 2 years ago, where Rick Tocchet was hard on him and really pushed him and challenged him, and Craig Berube will be very willing to do that, then I think it's a smart move for Toronto. The other thing that comes to mind with him and the Leafs is, like, there's not going to be there shouldn't be anyways, any kind of identity crisis as far as what he's supposed to be on that team. Even though Mitch Marner is gone, it's always like, these are the skill guys, these are the other guys. Mm-hmm. It still is like that, even though Marner's gone, but I guess that has its flaws, but at the same time, you can have a very defined role on that team and know that no one's asking you to do Nylander's job or Matthew Knies' job or Tavares' job. You got to do Dakota Joshua's job and do it well, because they're a good team. Like, are they going to be a 108-point team again next year? I don't think so. Maybe they are, but I could see them being a 102-point team, realistically. And if he plays his role well, then they will benefit greatly, because they need someone to play the Dakota Joshua role. Nothing more, and obviously nothing less. But he just has to be who he is, or who he can be when he's at his best.
Are they ecstatic with 15 goals out of Dakota Joshua?
If they get 15 goals out of a depth player, they're doing jumping jacks. Right. Like, no, and that's a bit of an exaggeration, but, like, that area of the lineup, that number of goals has been tough to come by, because they haven't been able to get, they have the $13 million player, the $11 million players. They've never had the $5, $6, $7 million players. And Dakota Joshua was just over 3, but he kind of represents that, like, middle ground where you should be able to get 15 goals. And for him, like, he should be able to get in there and realize this is the thing Dakota Joshua has to do more than anything in Toronto, is realize when the game is not to Toronto's liking and it's dull and it's sleepy, and provide some kind of spark in the game. And it doesn't have to be a fight, doesn't have to put someone through the boards, but he has to do something to get some kind of life in that bench, which he is capable of doing.
We ran a clip couple of weeks back of the coaches site where there was a little round table, Travis Green, Rick Tocchet, and Craig Berube. And Green was really leading the conversation, and they were discussing having to tailor your system to the personnel you have at hand, as opposed to trying to get players who aren't particularly adept or equipped to play your system, vice versa. And Berube made a comment about, dumping it in, but I'm not going to tell Austin Matthews to dump it in. We had that great debate all of last year with Rick Tocchet. Frank, where do you think NHL coaches are these days in terms of allowing the skill players, the exceptional players, to sort of have more freedom and play as they choose, as opposed to having to play strictly with a system? Because that's one of the big questions here for Elias Pettersson with regards to Adam Foote and a new head coach who we don't really know how he's going to want to play, but we know that Tocchet tried to reprogram him, and we know that that wasn't very successful, trying to make Elias a north-south player.
The league is the best or more conducive it's ever been to players being free to be who they are. And that's because the skill has gone to a whole other level, like individually, but I think just the quantity of players that are skilled and can make plays, there's more now than like the volume of it is just more than it was in the past. And so now you're in a situation where if you want to operate as a coach by essentially taking the puck out of all your skilled players' hands and saying, you got to dump it, like this many times, you're dumbing, like I've said this before to you guys, you're just dumbing things down, and all of a sudden your guys that are difference makers or your guys that are game breakers, they're not as much anymore because you're taking the puck out of their hands. So yeah, there's a time and place for everything. There's a time and place for a guy like Pettersson or Austin Matthews to dump the puck and go in and hunt it on the forecheck, but it doesn't have to be the only thing you do. It's just a recognition of what's the other team doing to you. Are they trying to stand you up at the red line so you have no room? Well, in that case, don't turn it over. Like, go chip it and get it, right? Like, so I think you do have to, as a coach now, give the players some leeway to make mistakes because it's going to happen, some autonomy, some ownership over what they do. And, ultimately, if they keep turning the puck over and if it's not going well, then yeah, you have every right as a coach to kind of flex your muscle and assert yourself. But you do have to understand who you got and what their strengths are and what they're good at. And, I think if you look at all those coaches that you just mentioned, like, it's okay for Travis Green to tell Tim Stützle, hey, sometimes you got to dump it in and go get it. But that doesn't have to be the thing you do every time. And it's okay for Craig Berube to tell Austin Matthews, hey, when you get the puck on the hash marks on the wall, like, you don't have to just force it into the middle of the ice. It's okay for you to stick your ass out and protect it and lean on someone, right? Like, it's okay to coach still. But, coaching goes both ways. You still have to allow these guys to showcase the skills that make them difference makers.
And rounding back to Joshua, our Whistler Golf Club poll question today, Frank, which trade do you think the Canucks will regret? Joshua, she loves, neither, both. What says you?
I think the Joshua one more than the Shelovs one, because they're still pretty well hedged in net. And I would have said the player as opposed to the goaltender, well, maybe not in every situation. Like, if Demko was the goalie that moved, I wouldn't have said that. But, like, Joshua's just a different guy. Like, keep in mind, Vancouver brought in Evander Kane, and Evander Kane plays a robust power forward style of game, and he's got plenty of skill, and he's got plenty of game still. So maybe that'll soften the loss of Dakota Joshua. It probably should. But there's just not a lot of guys really that are like when Joshua was at his best 2 years ago, when he was playing on the line with Bluger and Garland. That's a guy in a different way. He's a difference maker. He's not like the upper echelon type difference maker, but like I said earlier, a guy who can change the temperature of the game and frustrate you with what he's doing away from the puck, and then frustrate you because he can actually score, and kind of finish the job. And Shelovs is still working his way through the NHL process. Could end up being a great goaltender, could eventually go back to the AHL. Who knows? Like, you just don't know. But I think from what I've seen out of the best of Dakota Joshua, he's the guy that if he goes and flourishes in Toronto, you're like, yeah, we would miss that element for sure.
But given the Canucks needs, that second line center gaping hole that we've talked about, if you told, at least if I'm the GM of the Canucks and you told me Joshua's going to get 15 goals next year, which you say is great for him and for the Leafs, I would still say I'm okay with that for the 3 years off the cap and 3.25 whatever it is. I'm willing to make that sacrifice for the greater good of the lineup in terms of opening up space for the center ice position. Doesn't that make sense too?
Yeah. I listen,
a win-win, really.
It for sure, and ultimately, if you get your guy that you think is going to be your second line center, you needed to alleviate the cap space. You have to pull the trigger at some point, right?
Yeah.
And I think we always, when we have these conversations, we talk about players on the perimeters of the lineup, even though second line centers, right down the middle. It kind of hinges on what 40 is going to do still. Like, so Elias Pettersson still has to be, somewhat dominant, be a guy who can take over a game, and get back to his form. If that doesn't happen, then we're just kind of talking in circles about this guy in, that guy out, cap space here. Like, it kind of begins and ends there. Because if it doesn't happen there, you're problem solving at the higher part of your lineup, and that's just not something you need to be dealing with when you're trying to make the playoffs.
Should the Canucks be salivating that Marco Rossi and Bill Guerin still aren't talking? It doesn't seem like it's imminent or close in any way, shape, or form.
You know what's interesting? I was doing Ottawa radio yesterday, and they asked me about Marco Rossi with the Canadians. Mm-hmm. And the question was, does it make sense for a team like the Canadians? And I said no, even though I think Marco Rossi's a good player. I don't think it makes sense for the Canadians because Nick Suzuki's not big, Marco Rossi's not big, and you'd be attaching yourself to those two guys in what is your window now to try and compete, right? Like, all these guys are going to be entering their prime. I said it makes sense for two types of teams. Either you're just a really bad team, like who needs a centerman, or you're a team that's like, I guess just desperate for a centerman. Like, you need a centerman so badly. And I think Vancouver falls into that category. No, sorry, I messed that up. Here it is again. You either have a big, like, top line centerman, and you feel like having a smaller Marco Rossi mitigates, the size discrepancy as your second line guy, or you're a team that just needs a centerman so badly, and that's Vancouver. Those are the two categories. Sorry. And for me, like, I wouldn't be so concerned as opposed to in Montreal if you're going Suzuki Rossi, going Pettersson Rossi, because I think the whole for Vancouver is somewhat greater as far as, like, they need to have a centerman pretty soon. And I think Montreal can wait a little bit and see if Michael Hage is a guy or whoever becomes available. And they just, so if I'm Vancouver, the longer this plays out in Minnesota, I think the more chance there would be that you could try and get something done.
We had a good debate last week about, given the competition for a top two center, should the Canucks put DPD, Elias Pettersson in play, if that's what's going to
move the needle.
Yeah.
Could be. Like, it could be. I think with the back end, you're at a position of strength right now. It is funny, though, that some of your strength is at the position that teams don't generally have, right-handed defensemen. Like with Wielander and Mancini, you feel like you're pretty set for the future on the right-hand side. And then if you move a lefty, like most teams would have probably a left-handed defenseman prospect to spare. Vancouver's guy to spare is likely on the right-hand side if you're looking at it that way for quantity. Mm-hmm. But I think it's all going to depend what a team wants. Like, if they're calling, you got to weigh that option and see, does this actually make sense for us?
And it brings up a good question, Frank. Like, who's more valuable? Elias Pettersson, having played in the National Hockey League, looked really good, played a physical game, played so well that they didn't even dispatch him back to Abbotsford for the Calder Cup run. Or Tom Wielander, sight on scene in the NHL with that first-round draft pick, right side.
Because he's on the right side. Yeah.
I still would think it's Wielander. Yeah. I still would think the higher end upside for what he can be, right-handed shot. I think that's a harder commodity to come by. But you have to keep in mind, like you have Mancini. But at the same time, you don't just move a guy just to move a guy because you think the other player is going to be an insurance policy. Like if this organization ever decided they were going to move Wielander, I would say the return has to be so astronomical at this point because you just don't know what he could be. He could be a 15-year, like 25-minute per game stud on both sides of the puck.
Yeah.
And you just don't know that yet. So I think that's why maybe you could get the most, but that's also why you would have to get something astronomical to do it.
All right, buddy, we're going to release you to the golf course or to the Twins, whichever takes priority right now. Thank you for this, Frank. Have a great week. Catch up next Wednesday.
Boys. Okay, have a good one.
Secure some price from the historic Wall Center. Blake, believe it or not, there is a real-life NFL game tomorrow in the month of July in Canton, Ohio, the Hall of Fame game, Chargers and Lions. The preseason is kicking off, and, of course, the Seattle Seahawks are underway at training camp. It is time to welcome in one of our favorites here, Seahawks beat writer for the Tacoma News-Tribune, retired Army Captain, Mr. Gregg Bell. Back with us. Hi, Captain. How you doing?
I'm great. The Seahawks must be on their way to winning the Super Bowl because that's the only time you guys talk to me anymore.
No,
They're a middling franchise. You don't need me, but the Seahawks must be pretty good. A slow week in the Canucks and Whitecaps.
It is. Well, it's not a slow week for the Whitecaps. They've just signed a German superstar. I'll have you know.
Yeah, he's like 75 years old, but
the Sounders beat is
exactly
alive and well.
Yeah. No, we always check in with you at camp and then before the season and, take the pulse because, I got to say, Greg, I don't know what to make of this Seahawks team this year. It's a new quarterback. It's a new number one receiver. I'm not even sure who that is. It's a new tight end. Hopefully it's a new offensive line.
I feel like it's that meme of the Seahawks are a 9-8 team. Convince me otherwise. Go.
Yeah.
Tell us why they aren't middling, or are they?
Well, their defense could be elite, or at least top 5 in the NFL. The way they're now constructed under both the attitude and personnel from Mike Macdonald. The biggest difference between this year and last year in training camp is Macdonald has more of his guys. Ernest Jones being the foremost guy. But they drafted Nick Eamon-Worried in the second round. They traded up 17 spots to get him from South Carolina, 220-pound safety that McDonald wants to use like Kyle Hamilton, and in fact is already doing that in the first days of training camp, which surprises me, playing him all over the defense. Between Jones and Eamon-Worried and how he's using Devin Witherspoon and now DeMarcus Lawrence, who looks really good coming off a Liz Frank injury after 11 years with the Cowboys, with Leonard Williams, he's got his guys. Last year at this time, he was just trying to find out how to get to the facility and hire 22 other coaches. And he let Snyder and the personnel guys take care of giving him some Joes to play with. Well, now he's picking the Joes. And it's a big difference. We saw the latter half of last season, the results. Guys, I think they're going to have to win a lot of games 13-10 in that type of team because this offense has a ways to go. I'm not convinced that their offensive line is still competitive enough for San Francisco and the Rams to win the division.
13-10 in the pouring rain of November. Get your tickets for
exactly. There won't be any fans selling their tickets to visiting teams then. I mean,
I just want to mention this. I don't want to dwell on him just because we have lots to cover here in not a lot of time, but Nick Eamon-Worried, the second-round safety from South Carolina, is a athletic unicorn. 6'3", 220. Blakey ran a 4.38 at the combine with a 43-inch vertical and an 11.5-foot broad jump. So that is a athlete par excellence that's joining this
new number
defense.
3. You won't even recognize the old number 3. He looks bigger than Cam Chancellor in pads. I will say that.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. There's breaking news with the Seahawks today where John Schneider has a contract extension. It seems like Jody Allen and management or an ownership has really bought into his plan here.
Exactly, Matt. That's the takeaway, is that this is the second time in 18 months that they've decided John Schneider's path forward is the way to go. They chose him and his path over Pete Carroll, essentially, in January 2024 after they didn't make the playoffs. There was a fork in the road. Carroll wanted to keep his coordinators. He was loyal to his assistants. He wanted to keep some older players. And Schneider said, no, let's rip it up. And Jody Allen chose for the latter. And now he's a 4-year extension through the 2030s. And pretty remarkable. When they brought him in, people forget Pete Carroll hired him. Carroll was the executive vice president in charge of everything football here to lure him from USC. Todd Lewicki and Paul Allen did in January 2020. And John Schneider was a scout, and he made him a first-time GM, and now he's going to surpass Carroll's tenure here by at least 7 years and if he fulfills the end of the contract, he'll be a 20-year GM in his first job.
That's crazy. He's got some work to do on the offense, as you mentioned, because who's going to catch the damn ball? One thing, hey, whenever a receiver is traded, you're always underwhelmed at the return. So, I mean, the reverse should be true. Can't they just go and acquire a receiver at some point and pay very little to do so? Because it seems like receivers don't fetch much on the open market anyhow, but don't they need another receiver?
They don't think so because, Blake, they're going to use 2 tight ends and something called a fullback, which I don't know if Canadian fans ever heard of.
My goodness, a fullback.
Robbie Oots is a 275-pound one. He was a tight end at Alabama. They drafted him to play the position, and he's got the job already 2 days into camp. He won it. So they're going to run 2 backs. They're going to run Don James I formation, toss sweeps. It's going to be something completely different than they've had in a generation here.
This sounds like Army. Are they going to pass the ball?
They need another running back. They could be Army.
With less success, they will run the ball like Army. With less success, and they won't do as much wishbone and veer. But for them, if only they were in the American Conference this season instead of the NFC West.
Yes.
But the run game and the fact that they are going to devote so much personnel to the run game means they won't need 3 or 4 receivers on the field. I would be shocked if they go 4 or 5 wide very much in any game.
Wow.
Marquez Valdez-Scantling seems to be the X receiver because of his size. He fits that prototype. He doesn't nearly have the speed or physical skills that DK Metcalf. As an aside, they would not have traded Metcalf if both two things didn't happen. One, he didn't say, I think I want to go look somewhere else. Pete Carroll would have flown him out to Seattle and said, it's all good. We can make this work. Remember, we used to take our shirts off together at the combine. Let's make this work. Mike McDonald, none of that. You say you don't want to be here, see ya.
Yeah.
And so he went and found a trade, and they didn't expect the Steelers to give him a second-round pick because, I mean, look at Stephon Diggs and some other receivers, DeAndre Hopkins, they've fetched 4, 5, 5th-round picks.
That's right.
Steelers give him a second-round pick for Metcalf. Okay, and so that's why that happened. But to answer your question, Blake, they're going to move Jackson Smith and Jigba outside for the first time in his career because Cooper Kupp has taken every inside slot snap here in camp, and their accountant absolutely have to have Cooper Kupp stay on the field.
Has he been healthy, Greg? Has he looked good
so far.
there at camp? Okay. And what about Darnold?
If he looked, let me say this: if Cooper Kupp looked and played like this and practiced like this the last 2 years, he'd still be a Ram.
Right.
The injuries, of course, is why he's not there.
How about Darnold? How's he looked?
Inconclusive. He looked really shaky in the spring, and it looked like the defense was spooking him. And the defense is still confusing him. McDonald's throwing a kitchen sink at him right away because he's got players now who know his scheme. And they're doing let's fake the edge blitz and then drop that guy into the flat. Beeman Worry got a pick 6 doing that, although that was off of Jalen Milroe and not Darnold. They're tricking him. They're changing up coverages. Darnold says it's going to help him in the offense down the road. Darnold readily admits that Lions NFC North title game at the end of last season and then the Rams playoff game when he got sacked 9 times, that he held onto the ball too long trying to make big plays. And his thing this season is live with the check down. We're okay with the check down. The plan is if they run the ball effectively, those check downs will get first downs on 3rd and 6 or 5 or 4 instead of 3rd and 11, 12, and 13 that they've been living at the last few years. That's a big if. This offensive line has got a rookie left guard who Gray Zabel looks all the parts so far, but still is a rookie left guard who will get exposed by stunts in X games inside. They've got a center situation. They don't know if Oluwatimi is going to be the center. Jalen Sandell, Christian Haynes, who had never played the position until late last year in practice, he's also getting time at center. Christian Haynes, who got passed over twice for the job last year as a rookie, is currently the number one right guard. And then Abe Lucas, they still don't know if he's going to be – that knee's going to hold up after the tendon repair surgery that he played on last year. That's 4/5 of the offensive line I just mentioned. Yeah, I don't think they're there, guys, as far as competing with a healthy San Francisco and the Rams defensive front.
I mean, I like that theory, though. Is conventional wisdom that a quarterback that practices every day against a great defense ends up getting better as a result? Is that conventional wisdom?
Yeah, it is. And it's telling to me that this time last year, McDonald was really incrementally installing his defense, not putting in all the tricks and disguises. Not this year. Like I said, most of the guys know it now, but also they're trying to ramp up Darnold in that offense really quickly. The guy who stands to benefit in all of this, guys, is Kenneth Walker. He's going to get 20-plus carries and touches a game if Kubiak's offense goes as planned here. It's just a big leap of faith to think this offensive line that's been a mess for a decade is suddenly going to be good enough to run the ball that much successfully.
Yeah. Lastly, Captain Bell, we did an item on that story of Seahawks warning ticket holders that, don't sell them to Lumen Field. Used to be one of the great home field advantages in the National Football League, all those false start penalties. And over the last few years, we've seen the visitors and their fans just invade and take over Lumen Field. What do you anticipate this year at the park? Or is it going to be back to the 12s, loud and proud, or do you think that's a work in progress? We're still going to see a lot of opposing colors in the stadium.
Absolutely a work in progress, the Canadian says. It is absolutely. The first game they play in San Francisco, it'll be completely pewter and gold and whatever they call their colors down there, crimson, whatever they are, burgundy and pewter. They're going to be all behind because that's where the brokers, the deal on that thing is that the brokers own those. They were smart. The brokers bought the tickets that are behind the visiting team's benches in the 100 level because they know that's where fans want to sit. And unfortunately for the Seahawks, that's where it all shows up on television because that's where the cameras on the sideline cameras point at. Here's the bottom line. And I've written this. I've said it. I've talked to Seahawks people. They don't like it when I say it. Do what Al Davis used to say. Just win, baby. You win home games and they'll have fans. If you lose them, they're going to sell the tickets because you keep jacking up the prices every year.
Absolutely.
Yep.
It's on you. It's on you. And
that's
oh my goodness. I formation toss left is still my heart. That was the National Football League in the 80s. I would love to see more of that. I look forward.
The first snap of training camp, I thought I was watching Charles White at USC in the 79 Rose Bowl when John Robinson was calling the plays. I couldn't believe it. I was just like, this is crazy. And
that's like Tecmo Bowl.
Did I just see a fullback? Yeah, exactly. Did I just see a fullback? Did the quarterback go under center, turn around, and toss the ball to the running back? What is this
They might even rip up the turf and the grass in, but just the way they're hey, I'm sorry I had to run out on you. Please
I know. That's all right. Thank you, Captain Bell. Until
call
next
anytime.
Month.
And next time I'm coming through Van City, I promise I will call. I kind of snuck in and out last week, and I apologize.
He forsook us, Blake. There will be demerits. Rationing. Thank you.
Already have been. Thank you.
Secure some price from the historic Wall Center. Big game downtown. Make it more than just a night. Make it a memory. Stay steps from the action here at the Sheraton Vancouver Wall Center with an exclusive Secure some price rate. Call 604-331-1000. Mention our show. Some blackout dates apply. Subject to availability. Quite a interesting day in baseball yesterday, but first we'll get to the golf report brought to you by the Whistler Golf Club, the Arnold Palmer designed Whistler Golf Club. Final chance to make the FedEx Cup playoffs this weekend at the Wyndham Championships. Now, we looked at the Canadians a few weeks prior to the Open Championship and what they needed to do, and really there hasn't been a whole lot gained from the guys who have needed it most. Corey Connors is 13th. Nick Taylor of Abbotsford is in 17th. They are comfortably in. They would make the Tour Championship reserve for the top 30 if they hold their station. Taylor Pendrith is 37th. He would make the second round of the playoffs at the BMW Championship in a couple of weeks. A couple of weeks for the top 50. Mackenzie Hughes is an interesting case. He's 59th. So he needs a good finish over the next 2 weeks to move up into the top 50. He is also susceptible to a poor finish and guys leapfrogging him for the top 70. So don't blow it this weekend, Mackenzie, and then maybe go out and have yourself a tournament at St. Jude in Memphis, the opening round of the PGA Tour playoffs next week. And then there's Abbotsford's Adam Hadwin, 134th. It has not been a good year for poor Adam. So I looked at it. The PGA Tour puts out what they have to do, and a win doesn't even guarantee him a spot in the top 70, but that is what he needs at minimum to make the PGA Tour playoffs. Same goes for Ontario's Ben Silverman, who's also in the field this week. Other notables below the top 70 at the moment include major champions Gary Woodland. He needs no worse than a solo 25th. And Adam Scott, who needs at least a 2-8 tie for third to make it to the playoffs. We were talking with our buddy Al Chris Manson of the Whistler Golf Club last week, Blake, and we're not even in the month of August and the major season is over.
Yeah.
I do find myself struggling more and more with the PGA Tour calendar the longer this goes. Because I'm not like the majors, the playoffs don't do it for me like major championships do.
Yeah, I mean, the playoffs are starting earlier too, it feels like.
Yeah, they're fully out of the way by Labor Day.
I would, in my perfect world, I would have a major championship maybe as the last event before the playoffs begin. That's your last chance to get points. Have the PGA championship, move the PGA back to August, and have that as your final hurrah in mid-August, like August 15th. And then you're starting the playoffs either late August, August 25th or whatever, or even first week of September, I don't know. It just, I've got memory like when Mike Weir won the Tour Championship way back when. I seem to remember like orange leaves and him like it being a fall event.
Oh yeah, it was a fall event, but they wanted to get it away from the NFL.
Yeah.
And of course now they have a former NFL executive who's going in there and taking over, replacing Jay Monahan in time. The other thing, and this is something I think the PGA Tour has to look at. You're winning the war with LIV. Of that, there is no doubt. But Blake, the way they have constructed their schedule, it's really for the benefit of the players and their travel. Like they basically spent 5 weeks in California now and a month in Florida in the early part of the season. And Al and I were talking about this as well. Look at the markets that they're not in. They do not have a golf tournament in the New York City metropolitan area. Yeah. They do not have a golf tournament in Chicago. Those are two of the three biggest markets in the U.S.
And the Western Open in Chicago used to be a big deal.
It used to be a big deal. The only reason they were in Philadelphia this year was because they had to move the Wyndham Championship because Quail Hollow was hosting the PGA Championship. So that's another huge market that they're not in. As we have cried about in the past, they're not in the Pacific Northwest at all.
Almost ever.
Yes. Never. Yeah. They don't hit major Midwest ports like St. Louis or Kansas. It is a really sort of fragmented, compartmentalized schedule now where your best players aren't able, golf fans in large swaths of the country, U.S., aren't able to go out and see PGA Tour players live and in the flesh. And Blake and I have both been to events. I mean, there's nothing like it. The intimacy to be able to, walk the course with a top PGA Tour player and sit there and listen to the conversation with the caddy on every tee box.
Hear the distant crackle of a crowd going and awing a couple of holes over. It's so cool. It's really
watching
cool.
The ball take off. Like some of these guys, when they hit driver, it is just, it is a sight to see, aesthetically pleasing. That is the one thing that LIV is doing. They are trying to go out and get to big population centers and I do wonder whether that's a learning here for the PGA Tour as they go forward and construct future.
It's a good show. It is something that is absolutely missing. And of course, from the Canadian side of things, because there's only one event for Canada, and I think the PGA Tour sees that, Golf Channel and all that, like they can dig in. Canadians add a lot to the PGA Tour, not only the players that we just talked about, but they are big consumers of the PGA Tour. And there's one area that can actually see it up front. There's 20 million fans that have zero access to it. And if they were in some of those U.S. markets that we were talking about, if there was a Pacific Northwest event, if there was an event in, a decent event in Minnesota, there was just one in Minnesota, but not
upstate New York. I mean, I suppose you could argue one. There's there's the Travelers in New England, but yes, it's just they're in the Quad Cities of Illinois and Iowa. You're going to you're in itty bitty Connecticut. Although I guess you could argue that is somewhat close to New York City. But you're in some odd locations where you just don't have big population bases for people to go out and experience your live product. That is something that I hope the new leadership at the PGA Tour looks at, because I think you're leaving some opportunities on the table there.
Before we leave the golf report, you mentioned the war with Liv. Mm-hmm. Have you taken in the tour's battle with the Maxi Golf Tour yet? Have you watched Happy Gilmore 2?
I have not watched Happy Gilmore 2. That is on my list here.
Okay.
I have heard mixed reviews. I have heard some say, it's, a worthwhile and worthy sequel to the original, hitting some of the same notes. I have heard others say that it ain't close to the original.
It's a very polarizing review mix right now.
Okay.
Those that expected something more. And I don't think anybody, and I've seen this criticism, what did you expect it to be?
That's it. It's a Sandler film.
No. I think everybody went into it eyes wide open. It's a Sandler film. But even within that spectrum.
Oh, boy.
I found
no.
And I came late to Sandler movies. I hated Adam Sandler movies. But having kids, and the kids loved Adam, has brought me to Adam Sandler films late. And I actually think Adam Sandler, the Happy Gilmore original, is amongst the weaker ones of the Adam Sandler movies, myself. But I did not like it. My kids did not like it. In particular, the second half of the film. But we'll see. You go into it yourself, and you'll like. It was right there. It was very close. But there's just, I don't know. It almost seems like his performance is mailed in. Like you can almost read the insincerity of his performance through the lens.
Scale of 1 to 10, you're giving it a
4.
Okay. And that is the Golf Report, brought to you by the Earl Palmer Designed Whistler Golf Club, reminding you, if you want to get around in at the Whistler Golf Club this summer, you've got until August 31st. That's because their extensive golf course renovation will begin in early September. Blake J. Pat and I played the course last week. It is in fantastic shape. Follow at Whistler Golf on socials, because they are going to bring you, the golfer, into this process and show you what they are doing with the course after August 31st. But make sure you get your tee time in before then. Book your round for any time in what's left of July and August. WhistlerGolf.com. Blue Jays swing a trade for Baltimore Orioles reliever Seranthony Dominguez. The teams made the move between doubleheaders. Doubleheader games at Camden Yards yesterday afternoon, so Dominguez just walked into the visiting clubhouse. Funny part is, Jerron Watts-Brown, the former C's right-hander who the Orioles got back from Toronto, he was with Double-A New Hampshire playing Baltimore's Double-A affiliate in Bowie,
so he
Maryland.
did the same thing.
He did the same thing.
Crazy.
Deal was so rushed that Anthony pitched the second game of the double bill with an upside-down number 8 on his Blue Jays uniform. And as the TSN tweet notes, Mike, do we have that TSN tweet? If you are going to mess up a number, that's
it's a good one.
That's the one to mess up.
Yeah, like a 4 would look much worse.
Right. It was a steep price to pay for a rental, given how far Watts Brown has come with managing his control while maintaining his high strikeout rate. Some of us remember the playoff game last year where he struck out 10. But Dominguez has lots of postseason experience with Philadelphia and Baltimore, a 1.02 ERA in 17 playoff appearances, and he pitched in the 2022 World Series, and I think all of that appealed to the Jays. Meanwhile, on the field, Toronto lost both ends of the doubleheader. They've now dropped 4 in a row. Mariners lose 2. Astros win. They're 4 back of Houston and a 1-game lead on Texas in the wild card. This is turning into quite a derby in the AL West, with those 3 teams vying for a couple of postseason spots. The M's are promoting first base prospect Tyler Locklear, who had a cameo last year and failed miserably, but he's raking at AAA, and we all know they need some oomph, so he'll likely be off the bench.
I like the comment from Bichette, by the way, after this little skid here. We have to prove that what we did was not a hot streak, that that is who they are, and 4 straight. It's about time to nip this in the bud and start to win some ball games here. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Seas lose 2-4-1 in Tri-City. Fernando Perez was terrific over 5 innings, but the Dust Devils got to that Seas bullpen. Cutter Coffey with the home run for Vancouver. Chris McElvain starts tonight. Vancouver below 500 in the second half, 8 games out, needs some wins. Help could be on the way. The Jays assigned 8 members of their 2025 draft class to single A Dunedin yesterday, meaning some guys are likely to bump up here from Dunedin to Vancouver. They're back at it at the Nat Tuesday for Art in the Park night, and RBC We Care Wednesday is in support of the Special Olympics. Get your tickets 604-872-5232 or CanadiansBaseball.com. Victoria Mboko off to the 3rd round of the National Bank Open in her hometown of Montreal. This is her first 3rd round appearance in a WTA 1000 event after beating Sophia Kenin. You had it yesterday, Blake, on your Bet365 call. Bianca pulled out with that leg or ankle injury. Layla lost. Jeannie plays tonight, looking to fire up that crowd for a second time and keep her career alive. She's retiring after this tournament. Men's side, where Dennis lost. Dennis has been awful at this tournament for years. He even talked yesterday, Shapovalov, about how nervous he was and he didn't feel right in his hometown of Toronto. 3 Canadians in action today, including Felix Auger-Aliassime. Lines off on their bye, but they will be interested observers in CFL Week 9 as we have 4 East versus West games starting in Ottawa tomorrow, where ex-Lions quarterback Vernon Adams is out for the Stamps. PJ Walker is going to start at quarterback for Calgary. BC will be rooting for the Red Blacks, the Argos Friday in Winnipeg, then Hamilton and Montreal, who are in Edmonton and Saskatchewan, respectively, on Saturday. No Sunday night football this week from the CFL. That's what I don't like about their Sunday night. They do the Sunday night games. They should do it through the full summer. This is second year in a row. They've conditioned you to a 4 p.m. Sunday kickoff. Okay, fair enough. In fact, sometimes that's a really good time for me. I'm getting home from the weekend, have a chance to put the game on, fire up the barbecue, and then they stop.
Yeah, weird.
I'd love if you're going to do Sunday night football, routinize it for me through the summer. Results of the Whistler Golf Club poll question on Tuesday. Are you buying a Whitecaps ticket to see Thomas Müller? The people said, Blake.
I'm going to say they say yes.
They said yes. Percentage?
56.
57. Very well done. Colin and planning, I vote yes. I am more likely to make the trip to BC Place for the Whitecaps with Müller than without Müller. I'm in no rush to buy a ticket right away, if it makes sense. Nick says, just bought tickets to the August 17th game. Haven't been to a Whitecaps MLS match in probably 5 or 6 years. I don't really care, but he's been my favorite player for the German team since Schweinsteiger left, so this makes me happy. And our friend Yerke said, would if I could. Yeah, he lives back east. Yerke is also correcting me. I misspoke yesterday as we get into errors and omissions. I said Müller won the 2024 World Cup, 2014. Caps have 7 home games left. You were wondering about that. That includes the Canadian Championship tie match against Forge. Hamilton, of course, could have been Vancouver FC, but no, they redrew for some reason in the semifinals, so it's forged. We mentioned Bianca is playing, but she withdrew, and I had Felix playing yesterday. He plays today. Anything to self-report? Anything from the inbox?
No, nothing additional.
Thank you for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time and connecting with the program. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social, X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky, live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time weekdays, except for Fridays. And, of course, there'll be no show Monday on the BC Day holiday weekend. And please do support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. Keep it local.